Ukraine says a Russian missile strike in the eastern city of Kupiansk has killed at least one person. The regional governor said at least 10 others were wounded when a Russian S-300 missile struck a museum in the center of the city. Others have been buried under the rubble. Well, Arise chief correspondent John Cookson has been monitoring developments on the war in Ukraine, and he joins me now from London for more. Good to see you, John. Let's start with Ukraine's export routes for grain, which were disrupted by Russia's invasion. A deal allowed some of those exports to continue via the Black Sea. What's the state of play now?
Hey, Charles, good to see you. Well, the state of play is that, as you said in the intro, this letter is on its way to Putin. We don't know what's in it. Antonio Guterres is very keen for the Black Sea grain deal to be extended. Just to remind ourselves, it was agreed back in July between Russia, the UN, Turkey and Ukraine, and it's supposed to be renewed every 120 days. And the agreement allows millions of tons of grain that was stacking up in wharfs and on ships in Ukraine to be released to the outside world through the Black Sea and then into the Mediterranean and beyond to countries like those who desperately need it in Africa. And all went well to start with, but then the Russians began to say, well, hang on, if you want to renew it, we need some concessions. And the last extension was for 60 days only. And as you rightly say, it expires on May the 18th. And now the Russians are playing hardball again, Charles. And basically what they want to agree to the deal being extended is for Russia to be readmitted to the SWIFT banking system. These are all sanctions imposed by the West, the US and the UN. Readmitted to the SWIFT banking system. They want an allowance, a resumption of exports of farm machinery to Russia, which have been suspended, and for Russian ships, and Russian cargo to be admitted to ports around the world, which is in theory not happening. Although there's a big black market for Russian goods at the moment, and there are ports in the world that Russian ships can get into despite the sanctions. So that's the deal. That's what Putin is saying. Now, I can't see the Biden White House agreeing to any of those. I mean, it's a brave effort by Guterres. The Russians are just going to hold out just to probably right up to the wire to May the 18th. The other issue in the background is that the Black Sea grain deal allowed, as I say, millions of tons of this grain to get into the open market. And this has caused prices to plunge because the Ukrainian grain is so cheap. And we saw protests, did we not, earlier this year in Poland, where farmers just can't compete. So you've got this backstory going on at the same time. So Guterres, as I say, a brave effort. I'm not sure how much progress he's going to make with Putin. There will be a breakthrough in the end, but it'll go right to the wire.
Well, just picking up on some of the last things you said there, John, going beyond the exports via the Black Sea, Europe, the EU found other routes. They suspended tariffs and quotas on food from Ukraine and transported it through neighboring countries, and that's part of the problem that you're talking about. So the politics of this means that you've got a country like Poland, for instance, which is a staunch ally of Ukraine politically, but now having to introduce the ban because of what its local farmers are saying.
Exactly, and this, of course, weakens the regime in Kiev to a great degree. I mean, Poland has, of all the countries in Europe, Poland has been magnificent in reacting to helping Ukraine, admitting so many families, so many refugees, and looking after them. But now Poland sees itself in a very difficult situation, having to look after its own people now, including its farmers, which are a very, very important part of society and part of the Polish economy. And going along with the line that's been pushed by Washington and NATO that Ukraine should be helped in every way possible. So it's a very difficult scenario at the moment. And there's all sorts of monkey business going on at the moment, Charles. I must say it's very hard to know what exactly is happening. You mentioned Poland, but I'm hearing tonight that some of the weapons that the West has supplied to Ukraine, amounting to billions of dollars worth of weapons, are now turning up on the black market in Poland and countries close by like Romania, which is quite staggering. And I'm hearing tonight also that Seymour Hersh, the well-known journalist, American journalist, is reporting that Ukraine is actually buying Russian diesel on the black market to keep its tanks going. So you have this amazing situation where the Ukrainians are buying this black market diesel from Russia, the enemy, to fuel the war. I mean, go figure, it's just madness.
I have to say that's an absolutely extraordinary story, John. And beyond that, I mean, how surprising is it that during this war, Ukraine has continued to produce massive amounts of agricultural products? I mean, because most people didn't expect that, did they?
No, I mean, Ukraine's a big country, and I've been there twice now, and you have to go there to just realize how big it is. I mean, a regular train journey, say from Kiev down to Zaporizhzhia, is 1,000 kilometers. You know, it's 12 hours on a train, and during that time, you just go through endless countryside. And of course, Ukraine is one of the world's breadbaskets. They supply something like 34 million tons of grain to the rest of the world every year, similar in size to the Russian contribution to the world economy. So there's so many wheels in motion here, and there's talk of the spring offensive by Ukraine. I'm not sure there is going to be a spring offensive. The Ukrainians militarily just don't seem to be ready for it. The Russians seem to be digging in where they can and looking for the long war. And all Putin has to do is to keep it going as a war of attrition. And suddenly the West support for Ukraine, he knows will start to fail. And another report tonight on Bloomberg, Charles, that some of the countries that we mentioned, Poland, Romania, the debt that they're getting into at the moment amounts to something like $32 billion as a direct result of the war in Ukraine. So the pressure on the regimes in various European capitals is absolutely enormous, and it's difficult to know, how long this can be sustained, and all the time Putin has to just sit back and dig in, as I say, and defend what they've got, maybe everyone will go away in the end. It's a very, very interesting, difficult situation, and hard to fathom exactly what's going on, where things are going in the future. And we just heard Biden today announcing he's going to run again for the White House, and Biden is clearly hates Russia, and he's not going to back down. It is, in theory, a proxy war being fought on Ukrainian soil, and so there seems to be no end in sight. And the people who are suffering, of course, are the people in Ukraine and to the occupied territories that Russia occupies in Ukraine, which have been bombed by the Ukrainians. And it's a very depressing situation.
Indeed. John, thanks very much indeed. John Cookson, Arise chief correspondent, talking to me there from London.